Hugh Freeze has hit the ground running in his first week as the Auburn Tigers head football coach. What all does it mean?
Listen, put me in the parking lot, with Bears, and I'll go out there and play. It don't matter.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Happy Ferg Friday to all who celebrate, as we are joined by Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer. What a busy week, huh? What a crazy busy week. Hugh Freeze announced. We haven't talked since that that news has come out, but he's really hit the ground running, Ferg.
Yeah, I think the big thing with Hugh Freeze was going to be that, I thought from a football perspective, from purely football perspectives, he was going to be a better fit than Brian Harsin. And I think part of that, we're seeing this happen right now, which is the transition period. You talk about the quick decisions made on who's staying on staff, who's not staying on staff, recruits going ahead and, being able to kind of swerve with that, with those calls. Yeah, I mean, it's just the man's done this job at this level before. And you can tell that that's going to be kind of part of the process for him. And yeah, they can't, and they have no time to waste too. I mean, transfer portal opens up on Monday, recruiting starts this weekend. The live period comes back this weekend. So, I mean, you've got a whole lot that you got to tackle. And I think that was the whole thing with kind of Hugh getting this job is not only A, he wanted it a ton, but B, I mean, he was going to have a pretty detailed plan because this is a dude who's been here before. And unlike Harsin, who came in during COVID, it's a completely different landscape now. So you got that experience and you got that timing. And I think that's kind of driving this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, so far, everything he's done, do you feel good about it? I think the press conference was semi what you expect. I kind of thought he nailed it. He told the coaches that weren't going to be retained very quickly, hey, you're gone. Sorry, good luck to you. And the guys that it looks like he's keeping, Carnell Williams obviously is a no-brainer. It's not official yet, but it looks like Zach Etheridge and C-Rob are probably going to stay. And it's like those, I might have lumped Ike Hilliard in there. I talked about that on the show yesterday. It's probably the biggest quote-unquote surprise. And I don't even want to really use that word because I'm not surprised that he's let go, but I thought he'd be maybe more likely than C-Rob, but it seems like C-Rob and Hugh have a relationship prior to this.
Yeah, and also with the thing with Ike Hilliard, I think nothing against Ike Hilliard, nothing against any of these guys. I mean, there were several really good coaches that are going to be moving on. But I think like with Ike, A, he's got that NFL experience. I mean, he's going to be able to bounce into a new job, I think, pretty quickly. But B, also like you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator, you're probably going to bring in a new quarterback coach, so like that whole especially in the passing game, that philosophy is going to be kind of plugged in. And so it doesn't surprise me that Hugh Freeze would go get somebody who may work well with him, may work well with his offensive coordinator. Whereas a guy like Cadillac, you just knew you were going to keep him around with a running game. Looks like it's going to be much more of a reset in the passing game. But yeah, Christian Robinson is, and Etheridge, I think Zach Etheridge does a lot. Like he's kind of like the Cadillac for the defense. Sure. Auburn guy, great recruiter, good relationship guy. I think he is going to be helpful in this transition. You don't want to completely reset and just take away everybody. So I think especially with all the stuff that this program's gone through and all the stuff these players have gone through these last few years, having dudes around that they know and trust, I think is going to help ease this transition process.
Can you sell me on C-Rob a little bit more? Obviously, linebackers coach last year. We assume he will keep that same position as linebackers coach moving forward. I thought that was the most underwhelming position group on the team last year. Is that unfair for me to say, Ferg?
I don't think it's unfair to say. I also think the personnel kind of limited them as well. Meaning, Owen Papo never really. Now I would say November, Owen and Cam Riley had pretty good finishes compared to what we had seen for the first couple months of the year.
100% agree.
But it was a thin position group that there was a whole lot of transition going on with him. I think for the guy like Christian Robinson he is really, really well liked in coaching, but also in this program in particular. Players seem to love him. it seems to be kind of like, especially if Hugh Freeze is going to get all his hands on defense, on offense, and kind of rotate in his guys defensively. I think Auburn may opt for some more familiarity, or at least that, and Robinson would be a part of that. And I think also the thing for Christian Robinson is he's been on several staffs over the last few years of his career, if I remember correctly, who have gone through these coaching changes before, and so he's kind of bounced around a little bit. I think it would be very beneficial for him as a coach in his career to be somewhere for a little while longer, and I think there'd be some value in that for him.
Yeah, good point. And you're right. Owen definitely got better over the course of the year. And Cam Riley, like, maybe if he would have stayed healthy all year, we would have seen a different group there. So I'm cool with that. No, I agree with that for sure. And then I think the most improved position group, I said this on the show yesterday, Ferg, the most improved position group on the team from week 1 to the end of the year was the DBs. And you look at Zach Etheridge, and it's like at both corner and safety, Ferg, I think they both took a big step forward.
They did. And I think, the Iron Bowl was a case of, Bryce Young's the best. It could be the best player in America still.
He's very good. Yep.
He's just, and Auburn was just, trying to drink from a fire hose that whole game. But this was a pass defense that I don't know where the final number ended up being, but it was trending to be one of the best ones they've had in a while in terms of yards per play. And you remember there were a couple of games where they got torched by Penn State. Early in the season that Mercer and San Jose State were hitting those shots on them. They really locked down in the second half of the year, and it wasn't perfect, but in a difficult year, in a year where you're 5-7, I think you got the most out of a secondary, because it's hard to play secondary. It's hard to play in secondary in college football with just the rules and the pace and just everything that's happened in the game. So, keeping Etheridge around, I think. Cadillac was obviously like the biggest, like, easy layup, no-brainer move to make. I think Etheridge carries that on as well. And it'll be very interesting to see who Auburn goes with at the coordinator position.
What do you think as far as like a role change? Carnell Williams, what do you think he will be doing as Associates head coach that he wasn't doing before?
Yeah, I think it's on him now to be a little bit more of a guy who's vocal, in the locker room, with the players, taking on more of a leadership role in that aspect, and not just being focused on just his running backs, right?
Yeah.
He was the guy that rallied the troops here in the final month of the season. A lot of players look up to him, respect him. The associate head coach position is, the joke has always been, that's just a way to give a guy more money, right? So there's some of that to it, but also I think Cadillac is going to end up becoming a face on the recruiting trail. And he's going to be a little bit more of that, just kind of outward facing, like, this is our guy. This is a program legend. He's staying here. As I wrote earlier this week, he's one of only 5 assistant coaches in Auburn history to coach for 3 different permanent head coaches. And to tell you how crazy that stat is, one of them was Shug Jordan. One of them was Jimmy Hitchcock, who he's half of the reason why Auburn's baseball field's named after his name, Hitchcock Field. Right. Another one was a former SEC head coach that Auburn had for a while. And the other was Joe Witt, who, was at Auburn for nearly 40 years in athletics. So, like, he's got that role now, and now it's just going to be like, he's the guy. He's the guy that they're going to push out and produce as, like, this, as Freeze said in his opening press conference, he's going to help drive the culture. And I found it very interesting. I think there's a good parallel here between Cadillac Williams and Rich McGlynn in the case that these guys were interims. They helped Auburn through a really tough time. And when the new hires were made, the first thing both of those hires said is, like, Freeze and John Cohen said, he's going to help me lead. He's going to be, said the same thing about Rich McGlynn, said the same thing about Cal. I think there's a really interesting parallel in that way. And so it's a long-winded way of saying, like, he's going to have more big picture stuff and be more of the kind of a face of the program. Which will be interesting, because Cadillac has never really been that guy before becoming the interim, but it's obviously a role that suits him well.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, let's take a look at what this offense could look like under Hugh Freeze and what the biggest changes will be. I'll get Ferg's thoughts on that in just a moment. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all of your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends on everything. They've got more odds, lines, props than you could possibly imagine. Be sure to check it out at BetOnline. It's where the game starts. Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer.com. So you hire Hugh Freeze for his offense, right? That's the biggest selling point of what he brings to the table. Seems like he's very eager on the recruiting trail. We'll touch on that in a second. But what do you anticipate being the biggest difference from Brian Harsin's offense this past year to Hugh Freeze's offense next year?
I think the biggest difference is going to be the pace of play, and just it's going to look more like what Auburn had with Gus Malzahn. And I think there's a real thing about it where like Auburn went and you marry the opposite of your ex in coaching, but this time you got this closest guy to the guy before the guy, right? Like this is a situation where I think you watch Hugh Freeze's offense, and he had a very interesting point. I think the most interesting thing that came out of that press conference on Tuesday was talking about him not possibly calling plays. One of the things he said about it is saying, like, there's some guys that are really good offense coordinators and really good play callers, and I think we can marry what they do with what I do in the red zone and make it work. And there's some names that can pop up. I wrote about it in the mailbag this week. They kind of just like, I'm just speculating, but like it would make sense. Like, okay, this name would make sense according to the stats. I do think this is going to be a spread offense. This is going to look much more like a modern offense. This is not going to be pro style. This is going to be much more of what you saw from Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss, what you saw from Gus throughout his career, Josh Heupel at Tennessee. Like that
Sure.
is going to be kind of the style. Auburn is not necessarily going to be super interested in like going under center and playing with fullbacks and multi-tight ends. This is going to be more of kind of what we would consider a modern spread offense, and that's just going to change everything. Now, I think the identity is going to be heavily influenced by whoever the offensive coordinator is.
Sure,
we shall see who that is, but yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be from that kind of tree branch, whatever you want to call it, of those kind of offenses.
So over the next month, as this roster shapes into what Hugh Freeze wants it / needs it to be for next year, you're going to have some guys leave. You're going to have several guys come in. I don't think as many guys are going to leave as we thought maybe a month ago. I think a lot of guys are going to stay. We'll have to wait and see.
Yep.
But the biggest winner in all this is whoever is the starting quarterback next year. I think right now that's Robby Ashford. I wouldn't be shocked. In fact, I'd actually be more surprised if they didn't bring in a transfer quarterback.
I think they're going to need to.
Yeah.
I think they're going to absolutely need to.
I don't think 3 guys is enough. So we'll see what happens there. And there's a chance that, if Calzada sees the writing on the wall, it's not the guy, he may leave again if he's able to. I think he'll be able to grad transfer. So, and you got to think TJ Finley, he can leave now because he'll be able to grad transfer in spring. So I think it's going to be Robby, but still, regardless, whoever's QB1 next year, you may see one of the better years of quarterback play in recent Auburn history anyway.
Yeah, I think Hugh's got a rep. Obviously, what he did with Malik Willis, what he's done with quarterbacks they've got some speed to him, some wiggle to him is going to be good. It's the thing with Robby though. It's like, can Robby Ashford get to being around a 60% passer, which is what Malik Willis was at Liberty for the most part, which is what Bo Nix was at his best under Gus Malzahn. Like, you do that, and you marry that with his running ability, because I think as he showed over the last month of the season, Robby Ashford is one of the more talented running quarterbacks I've ever seen, because he's such a really good athlete, but he's good at just tucking the thing and going. I wish he did it more, actually. You don't run for that many yards against Alabama if you're not good. Like, it wasn't one of those things where it's like when he was making big plays against other teams, there were people like, oh yeah, it's just a bad defense. It's like, Alabama ain't that, So, I think, like you said, you wish he did it more. I thought all throughout when it was Ashford was the guy under Harsin, it was like, you got to give more design runs for this dude because that's just what he's good at. The interim staff leaned into it. I would expect this staff to lean into it as well because they have experience with that. Hugh Freeze has experience with a guy like Malik Willis. He has experience with other guys in his past that can go, and that's his biggest weapon. But I do think, like you said, I do think they're going to try to bring somebody in to at least compete. I'm not saying you bring in a guy who's going to say you're going to be the starter.
Yeah, right.
Look what – I mean, you just went through that with Zach Calzada and it did not work out.
True.
So I think it's more of like just for depth purposes and numbers purposes, you need somebody to come in and push Robby Ashford. And if he can just get to be a solid quarterback through the air, I mean, there's real potential in this guy.
Yeah, and I think he's better than what his stats were just because of the injury.
Sure.
And I'm sure we talked about this during the season. Like, it looked like he wasn't 100%. And then when he kind of announced, I think you were the one who broke that on Twitter, or talked about how he like had a sprained AC joint in his throwing shoulder. It's like, I can't imagine doing that. So yeah, props to him. I mean, he's just such a tough kid. The only argument to like him not having more design runs is like, I mean, you got to somewhat question his durability, not his will, right? And his desire. I think that's very evident that he has that. But it's like, why? I mean, it seems like he was battling like 4 or 5 different injuries over the course of the season.
He told us
little cause for concern.
He told us 4 or 5 of them, and I think all of them were upper body. And it kind of makes sense. Like when you have a sprained AC joint, you can be like, why did Robby Ashford throw dimes at times like that one against Javarius Johnson in Alabama? He had some really good throws in other games as well, and still finished less than 50%. It's like, well, consistency, like you might be able to power through it on some throws, but not all the throws, right? And it does affect you. If he gets healthy, that's the thing about Robby Ashford is that he's such, untapped potential coming in. And I think what he did, I mean, the effectiveness he had, Auburn's offense was rough this season, but the effectiveness he had, despite the fact that he was hurt and could not throw the ball on a consistent basis, speaks to something. Okay, if you get somebody in here as an offensive mind who is more suited towards his quarterbacking style, and he gets healthier, you can see where the potential lies in there. And it also helps that Jarquez Hunter will be back for another year, and he had quite a season.
He's going to be joined by a lot of people that he has a relationship with. Hunter will be back. Damari Austin will be back. And then you should keep all your wide receivers, with the exception of Shedrick.
And you bring Landon King back?
Yep, Landon King's coming back. I don't know how much of a connection they have because they only Landon's one catch I don't even think was from Robby. I think TJ threw that one. So it's like, what does that relationship look like?
Yeah.
But still, like there's a lot of talent coming back. There's no question about it. All right, so there's a lot of differences between Hugh Freeze and Bryan Harsin, but I want to talk about the biggest one. And it's got me excited in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Alumni Hall. Alumni Hall is the best place to buy Auburn gear. And look, it's the holiday season. We all have Auburn fans in our lives that we love and cherish. And what better way to show them that love than to go to Alumni Hall and buy them their new favorite piece of Auburn gear. It's all officially licensed through the Auburn University. AlumniHall.com for the out-of-towners. Boy, out-of-towners love Auburn gear more than the folks that live here. So be sure to check out AlumniHall.com or the physical location in Tigertown. Thank you so much to Alumni Hall and AlumniHall.com for partnering with Locked On Auburn. Ferg, real quick, before we jump into what I think the biggest difference between Hugh and Harsin is, tell folks what all's going on at the Auburn Observer.
Yeah, big story. Big stories this week at the Auburn Observer. You can check out. Wrote a story on Hugh's hire and how flat out wrong I was about John Cohen hiring Hugh Freeze. Sorry. Had a story on Cadillac Williams and just we mentioned it earlier and his impact. There's a mailbag, huge mailbag today. A lot of basketball, a lot of football in there on Thursday, and then Friday. By the time you're listening to this, new podcast episode previewing basketball for this weekend. And then also a new edition of the Stretch 4 where I break down the 4 biggest topics for Auburn basketball right now. So you check all that out, auburnobserver.com. It's $6 a month or $60 a year to subscribe. A lot of you who are listening are already subscribers. Love you guys. Want to say it's the holidays. We're in December now. You can give gift subscriptions. You can give a month or a full year. And we'll put those links all over our newsletters as well. And it's super easy. All you need to do is pay and know the other person's email address. And once they're in, you're in. You can also set it. So it's like you want it to like the subscription activate on Christmas morning or whenever you're giving gifts, you can do that as well. It's super, super easy. AuburnObserver.com.
Perfect. All right. I think the biggest difference between Hugh Freeze and Bryan Harsin, and I think it's a great difference, is you can tell Hugh Freeze wakes up and thinks about recruiting. Bryan Harsin, not so much. But I think that's going to be it, right? And he brought it up in his press conference. There were national media members talking about he's already recruiting 20 minutes after he accepted the job and all of that. To to me, that's the biggest difference, right? Because this is much like when we hired Harsin, a build, but you got to do it quicker, right? And the way the transfer portal works is you're able to do things quicker now. We've seen it at Tennessee, seen it at South Carolina this year. There's ways to do that. And I think Hugh Freeze is more likely to embrace that and be excited about that than Harsin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he is a guy, at Boise State, Brian Harsin had the top class at Boise State pretty much every year. And they didn't really have to do much because that's just what Boise State does. They are the brand in the Mountain West. And then you come to Auburn and it never clicked. It was, I don't want to say just flat out dysfunctional. It just never really got to the level it needed to be on a consistent basis, the recruiting operation at Auburn. And obviously a lot of circumstances led to that, the outcome. But yes, Hugh Freeze knows recruiting. He knows recruiting in this area. He's going to do whatever it takes, man. This is his chance. This is his opportunity, and I'll say this, and some people will turn their noses up at it, but it's true. Nobody else was getting him out of Liberty right now. He was Auburn was the only place he was linked to in this coaching search. And I think now that the hire
even 2 years ago, Ferg.
Yeah, exactly. And now that the hire has been made, this dude is going to take advantage of this opportunity. And I think recruiting and hitting the ground running with that is going to be huge for them. He's gonna be a guy that I think does a better job of managing relationships both on the recruiting trail with the people who are given to NIL, with the people in charge, ABCD, whatever. This is going to be a better fit in that aspect from the very beginning. And I think that could, on the field, have some really, really big changes, make some really, really big differences for this team.
All right. Last question. I'm going to put you on the spot here. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this. If you had to guess how many guys Auburn adds to the transfer portal in the month of December, how many would you say? 7, 8?
Maybe. It's crazy because this is now the new world where it's we
don't quite know what normal is yet.
Right. This is the first time we've had a portal window, so you're just sitting here thinking okay, well, it's not just going to be a constant stream, which is a good thing. Yeah, I do think. I mean, they've got to get reinforcements. They got to get offensive linemen if they can, which is always going to be tough in the portal. They got to get edge rushers. They got to get defensive linemen. They can use some. They can use some other spots elsewhere. So there's such a need. And look, when Brian Harsin was at Auburn, when Auburn was still rolling with him, the thought process was this was going to be a class where it was going to be smaller on the high school level and huge in the transfer ranks. That's not changing now. So, yeah, I mean, I couldn't even begin to kind of throw a number out there because I do think Auburn's also going to make some noise in high school recruiting here in the month of December as we get into the early period. But there's going to have to be a lot of bounce. It's the Wild West. The limits are off. Everything's kind of like crazy. So I do think when we start doing our scholarship chart here in the near future at the Observer, I'm just going to start from scratch. Usually I kind of carry over from the next year and kind of adjust. No, can't do that anymore. This is good. This is going to be a from scratch experience.
I'll tell you what, we talk about signing up for the Auburn Observer. I have gotten my year-long annual subscription money's worth out of that chart. It's favorited on my I pull it up all the time. Whenever we're talking about guys that could come and go, I pull it up daily. So yeah, I appreciate that.
It's fun to do. It's how my brain works. I have to.
It's not the Bill Cameron depth chart, but it's staying close.
Dude, oh man. I love the Bill Cameron depth chart so much. And Dan Peck has told me for now a couple of years now that what I should do is I should pay Bill to get the exclusive rights of the Bill Cameron depth chart on the Observer. And I was like, well, yeah, then I'd be a millionaire, so, but yeah, no, it's going to be wild. It's going to be wild because I think this roster is about to turn over a ton and it needs to, it absolutely needs to. And then on top of the fact, there's a lot of guys who are going to be NFL dudes or seniors outgoing. It's going to look a whole lot different next year, but that's the new world of college football.
Ferg, how can people find you, hear you, love you, sign up, all that stuff? One more time.
AuburnObserver.com. $6 a month or $60 a year to sign up. You can give gift subscriptions if you're already subscribers. Appreciate all of you guys. It's been a good, very busy week, but it's been a good week for business, and appreciate everybody for doing that. You can also listen to our podcast wherever you listen your podcast. Yeah, that's cool. That's me. I'm on Twitter, JFergusonAU, but you probably knew that already. It's literally right there.
It's right there. That's right. For the audio people, they can't see it.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer, auburnobserver.com. It's worth every single penny. You can find all my written work at auburndaily.com. We'll see you. We'll do a live show tonight, Friday night, following Auburn basketball's game against Colgate. All that right here on Locked On Auburn.